In the quiet woods of northern New York, people once lived peacefully. But beneath those trees, something unspeakable happened. In 1862, under the floorboards of an old building, over 100 dead bodies were found. They were not buried with care. Their bones were broken, their skin had been marked, and there were signs they had suffered before dying. This was not a normal grave. It was the final resting place of victims from a place called the Church of the Pure Spirit. For many years, nobody knew the full truth. The records were hidden away. Only people with special power could see them. But now, lost writings, old journals, and forgotten government files show a terrifying story, the rise of the Ravencroft family and the evil they created. This tale begins in a small village called Ravenwood. Around the year 1825, 3 brothers arrived there. Ezra, the oldest, had eyes like deep wells. He spoke in a voice that made people stop moving. Silas, the middle brother, always had ink on his fingers from writing. He loved old books and strange ideas. The youngest, Caleb, was the quietest. He whispered more than he spoke, but his whispers carried across rooms. When he had visions, his eyes would roll back, and he would speak in strange sounds. These brothers brought money, books, and plans. They built a church far from town. It was not like other churches. The walls were dark stone. The rooms were shaped in a circle. The tallest tower seemed too large for such a place. There were no windows. Only lanterns gave light. It felt more like a tomb than a temple. The villagers were curious. They came to listen. Ezra told them a new message, a message of pain and cleansing. He said suffering could wash away sin. He said that the flesh was weak and dirty. The only way to be free was to burn away evil through trials. People were unsure, but some listened. That area was full of religious change. New churches were appearing. Old beliefs were dying. People were hungry for something to believe in. So when Ezra spoke with power, Silas wrote holy books, and Caleb claimed to hear voices from beyond, people started to follow. The first followers were those who had lost everything: widows, orphans, broken men, and rich people with empty hearts. Caleb interviewed each person who wanted to join. He looked into their eyes and asked strange questions. Only some were allowed to stay. Those who passed were called vessels. At first, the rituals were simple. They prayed all night. They fasted for days. They stood in freezing rivers. Ezra said this was just the beginning. Each pain was a step toward heaven. By 1827, the group had grown. Some people gave away their land and money. Others built small homes near the church. They believed in the message. They trusted the brothers. But slowly, the pain increased. The water got colder. The fasting lasted longer. Then came the first real ceremony. It happened on the longest night of the year, December 21st, 1829. Ezra said Caleb had seen a vision. That night, everyone was called to the main room. There were candles placed in a spiral. In the middle stood a platform. 3 names were called: Sarah, Michael, and Rebecca. They walked to the center. Silas tied them to wooden frames shaped like upside-down crosses. Then, the 7 trials began. First, cloths soaked in water were placed over their faces. Then they were buried in dirt up to their necks. Hot iron was pressed against their skin. Ice water shocked their bodies again and again. Their screams were answered with chants. Through pain comes light. Through light comes flight. By morning their bodies were broken, but they were alive. Ezra said their sins were gone. Caleb whispered into their ears. Then something happened. They shook, screamed in strange tongues, and finally stopped moving. Ezra said they had ascended. Their bodies were placed beneath the church. People visited the dead and prayed beside them. More followers joined. The pain became normal. Each new ritual was worse than the last, but no one left. By 1830, rooms were dug under the church. First just one, then many. Some were for prayer, others were for trials. One room was filled with the dead. They called it the Chamber of Saints. In these tunnels, the truth was hidden. Silas studied old medical books. He learned how to hurt without killing. He learned how to keep bodies from rotting. Some victims were turned into skeletons. Others looked like they were still breathing. Their bodies were placed in rows. They sat in chairs. They knelt in prayer. Their eyes stared forever. New people kept joining. Some were chosen for ascension. Some vanished. No one asked why. Caleb picked the next vessels. Ezra gave the orders. Silas wrote the records. Silas also started sending bodies to schools. At that time, doctors needed dead bodies to learn. But the law said only criminals could be used. So Silas made deals. He sent bodies to cities. In return, he got money and knowledge. He learned new ways to cut, burn, and freeze. By 1845, the church had over 200 members. The brothers had money, land, and power. They helped orphans. They gave to charities. Outsiders saw only good. No one saw what happened below. But in 1847, a man named Thornhill, a postal worker, noticed something strange. Money moved in odd ways. Big sums went to far-off places. He also met a woman who had escaped the church. She spoke of children disappearing and bodies kept in underground rooms. Still, nothing was done. The law protected churches. There was no proof. But then Caleb broke. His mind collapsed. He screamed about spirits and pain. One night he escaped. He ran into the town square. He shouted everything, names, numbers, and secrets. He was caught. Ezra said Caleb was sick, but Thornhill arrived and listened to Caleb. The details were too clear. He gave maps of the tunnels. He named the dead. He described the tools. A search was ordered, but Ezra and Silas acted first. They burned part of the church. They hid records. They moved bodies. Still, enough was found: chains, tools, bones, and chemicals. In one room, they found children's bodies. They were small. They looked like they were playing, but their skulls were cracked. Their ribs were broken. Ezra and Silas were arrested. Caleb was taken to a hospital. The trial was huge. People came from many cities. Ezra spoke in court. He said pain was a gift. He said their work was science. He said the children were pure. The jury found them guilty. They were to be hanged. But 1 week before the execution, fire broke out in the jail. Silas died. Ezra vanished. Some believed he escaped. Others said he died in the fire. Months later, doctors who had helped Silas were killed. Their bodies were placed like the victims from the church. Notes were left. The spirit remembers. Years passed. Rumors spread. People saw churches that looked like the old one. In Vermont, a hidden room was found. In it, a journal. The writing matched Ezra's. It ended with, "The work continues." Even now, the land where the church stood is empty. No one builds there. On quiet nights, people say the ground makes no sound, as if it remembers. This story shows how faith, pain, and power can twist into horror. The Ravencroft brothers left behind more than bones. They left a warning. Will you listen? If this tale captured your mind, share your thoughts in the comments. Press subscribe and join us as we uncover more forgotten nightmares buried in history's darkest corners.